time attack like fan in me, that is such an insane move. So he's in New Jersey at this point. We're in Ohio. He drives his car overnight from Ohio or from Jersey to Ohio, gets rained out his first session, and resets his already existing record by about a half a second. And on the very last session. But Jackie's turned about 8 trillion laps there, and he is an incredible driver. I let it totally get into my head and screwed up, but I didn't have anything for that record. I could have beat his old record, but I wasn't going to beat him that day. So I need to invent about 2% more performance is what I'm looking at right now. And this is up here. I've got 2 seconds and 2/3. Jackie Ding keeps screwing me up, ruining my life. But we're gonna catch him. I got something for him.
Well, so that's one of the questions I want to ask you, because so you finished second, you finished third. I think at Mid Ohio you took second, and Jackie Ding in Street Mod is the car in his Supra. Is the one to beat.
Yes. Did you hear what he did?
Well. Maybe it's just the two events.
I'll just tell you the story. He's at Global Time Attack, right?
Yeah.
He's at Global Time Attack, and he's winning by like 5 seconds, like complete blowout. And he sees I'm creeping up on his record, and he hits me up on Facebook, and he goes, "Hey, you see, you're getting pretty close to that record." And I'm like, "Yeah, I gotta, you didn't show up to this event, so I gotta try to keep you honest, And he's like, "I can always just drive out." And I'm like,
So this is you're in Mid Ohio,
but the competitor in me and the time attack like fan in me, that is such an insane move. So he's in New Jersey at this point. We're in Ohio. He drives his car overnight from Jersey to Ohio, gets rained out his first session, and resets his already existing record by about a half a second. And on the very last session. But Jackie's turned about 8 trillion laps there, and he is an incredible driver. I let it totally get into my head and screwed up, but I didn't have anything for that record. I could have beat his old record, but I wasn't going to beat him that day. So I need to invent about 2% more performance is what I'm looking at right now. And I think I know where that's at. But yeah, that story is just fantastic. Jackie just like
crazy.
Happens.
I mean, that's going to be a movie at some point. It should be.
How could it not be?
That's crazy. Well, and so that's one of the things I wanted to ask is like, so you have that experience, and how do you come back from that, and what is your steps to like analyze what happened in the weekend and decide like, okay, what is the next step? What is the change?
Thing about time attack in to a certain degree is you have to really concentrate on yourself, because you're going as fast as you can go. So what I'm looking at is the record, whatever the record is, whether it got reset or not, and how far back are we, and how much. That's why I say 2%. It literally is about 2% performance I need to find. 2% doesn't seem like a whole lot. 2% is a ton in this game. When you look at Gridlife Midwest, we're all separated by a half a second. Okay, in a minute 40 lap, we're separated by a half a second. That's, if you look at that, it's literally like a half a percentage of performance.
Yeah.
2% is a lot. Now, there's a lot of different things you can do to get 2% performance. One of them is horsepower, but there's only so much of that you can add. There's definitely a good chunk of that is in me personally. There's probably 1% of that performance that is on me. And I am man enough to admit that. But there's some stuff we can do to the car. I have by far the most rudimentary aero on the pointy end of Street Mod Time Attack. It is very, very basic. And there is a lot I could be doing on that front. I still have some, I'm still setting up this car from when we did the drop knuckles on it, which don't even get me started on that. But man, I could argue for days on why drop knuckles shouldn't be allowed in this class, but to win this class, you need drop knuckles. But we did the Wise Fab kit all the way around, and that drastically changed suspension geometry, and I'm still trying to figure out how to make that work to 100% of its potential, coming back from driving a car with kind of ugly suspension geometry and making it work by messing with sway bars and shock settings and stuff like that to try to get the car to rotate the way I wanted to. And some of that is even, I'm having to calm down a lot with the way that I drive. My former ass out approach is no longer the fast way because the car handles like a touring car now. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes you got to put the old boot in it, but it's helping a lot. Front differentials will go a long way for me too. I definitely need to get a better front diff. But yeah, it's small stuff.
So
stuff.
It sounds like you're looking at the whole aspect of the car.
You have to.
Like drivetrain.
Yeah. It's a system. And that's how a lot of people, I have a ton of customers who don't see things as a system. Everything is a system. And it's even broke down into smaller systems. An engine is a system. If you look at an engine as anything but an air pump, you're screwing up. Like, you can't call me and say, I'm going to run a stock turbo, but I want to get this, stage 4 extreme block with these gigantic cams and expect that to work out right. That car is going to drive like ass and you're going to hate it. Everything is a system, and you need to work on the efficiency of said air pump for an engine, or with suspension, you doing one piece will mess up something else. It needs to be looked at as a full system. If you just do coilovers, you may or may not improve performance at all, but coilovers with a set of sway bars and a roll center adjustment kit and maybe an anti-lift kit and some Botox bolts in the back are going to go a long way. Yep. And it's more money, but if you do it in one kit, then you do one alignment.
Right. But the alignment and suspension geometry is definitely one of those. I think it's one of those low-hanging fruits in especially the GD chassis with the McPherson suspension.
Drastically overlooked too by a lot of guys who are out there running. Just insanely overlooked. It is extremely low-hanging fruit, and it's very easy to get wrong if you don't know some basic rules of thumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and so, do you think it sounds like, if people haven't really tried to build a car at the pointy edge, you're saying you're 1% to 2% away from being able to run or compete for that first place. But It's like that last 1% or 2%, that is the very hardest.
That is the hardest.
To get.
That's the stuff that you got to research your ass off for. That's the stuff that a basic plywood splitter ain't going to get it done anymore. Right. That's the stuff where, your driving abilities need to step up. You need to spend some time in the sim. You need to try to get on track somewhere else wherever you can. That's one of the reasons I picked up my BRZ. Is I can put laps, just lap after lap after lap in my BRZ. If I would have driven my BRZ for a session at NJMP, I would have went a second and a half faster, no doubt in my mind. The biggest reason for that is when stuff's ripping by you in boogie, you don't have a chance to think. You're kind of riding the lightning. Right. But when you go out there and something a little slower, a Fit, BRZ, something like that, you can play around with stuff a little more, and stuff's happening quite a bit slower, and you can find grip that maybe you didn't realize was there when you're blowing through with 600 plus horsepower. Right. It's hard to learn a track when you have boatloads of horsepower, and it's a lot easier if you go out there with something, a little bit slower. If I can give any bit of advice to somebody, is that, one, start with a slow car and learn to drive fast. And two, it's if you are driving a fast car at a track and you're having a problem with slow cars being around you, maybe you should talk to the slow guys and figure out how they're going so fast, like these slow car guys. Speed is relative.
Sure. Yeah. Just having the power does not mean that you're going to be the fastest car on the day.
No, and what you could be doing is really messing up a lot of people around you, especially if you're running time attack. So I don't want to throw anybody under the bus on this one, but recently we had a very prominent drifter come into time attack. Okay. And had a semi-unfortunate aero failure at a very major event. So the car went fast and then it didn't go as fast. Then unfortunately, when it went fast, it put him in a position that landed him right in the middle of the street modified field that was trying to go for the victory. And some laps were ruined, some tears were made, whatever. And he this last event we went to really got the car sorted out, used his mirrors correctly. Everything was great. Did a great job. You got to learn somewhere. Just one of those things, like if you were to get into time attack, it's a lot of times better, no matter who you are and how experienced you are, and how good of a driver you are, because this man is an extraordinarily good driver and has sorted this out since then. So I don't want this to be like a slight on him at all. But you might want to run one with a lesser class car, or maybe talk to a buddy about co-driving something just to kind of get a feel to how this game really works.
Well, and that's because
if I'm reading this right, is that the car that sounds really good? Does it sound really good in real life too?
Glorious.
Oh man.
But again, the nicest dude you ever met. We had a great conversation at Lime Rock about it all. Awesome guy. It's just you got to learn the game somehow, and he had already been doing other motorsport stuff and immediately picked this up. It was just an unfortunate situation. And it's the most extreme example I can think of off the top of my head. Great dude. Have nothing against him.
It goes to show like how unique of an environment the Time Attack is, and how just because you're successful in other types of motorsports, it's like, a lot of road race guys look at Time Attack and they go, this is just qualifying. I do that every race. Like, what's the big deal? It's like, well, it's there's a little bit more to it than that. And and that kind of goes to show. Especially
when you're talking like bleeding edge cars, anything street mod up, because you are going out there with a car that you 100% can trust to go out there and do what you're going to do when you're qualifying. For the most part, they might make a small setup change or whatever, but that car for the most part. You make some small setup changes with a Time Attack car, or you put a new turbo on, or what, that car changes from event to event like no other. And you have to be able to go out there and lay it down in 2 laps. That's it. That's all you get on most of these cars is 2 laps a session. And if that's what it is. I mean, the some of the other classes you might be able to get away with some more. We have Club TR and Sunday Cup and stuff like that. Those guys run the entire session. Half the time they run their fastest time. They're like 8th lap or whatever. That's cool. Right. But like bleeding edge, crazy guy Time Attack, different story. It's just a different game. And I mean, it's just a weird way to measure your penis.
If you want another reference for like how much like track dynamic stuff, not that I'm a big Time Attack guy or road race guy in any way, right? But look at Formula One and like the onboard audio, like team radio communications, and how often they're complaining about, during practice or qualifying, slow cars. Oh, he was in my line. What the hell is this guy doing? Thinking he's here and stuff like that. And these are professional FIA super licensed drivers, right?
And these cars are all very equally matched too.
Right.
So now take that, and then take somebody like James Houghton Zevo, or hell, even my car. Okay, we make a lot of, especially on a straightaway track, Road America or something like that. We're screaming down the straightaway, and then the first session we have somebody out there and like who happened to bump in with to Group A with like a Club TR car. They make 240 horsepower max. You know what I mean? Like they're just going to make their speed drastically different. And I mean, they could be on their hot lap and we're going to blow by them because the speed differential is nuts.
Right.
And Group A is not for the faint of heart at all. Like Group A in Gridlife is nuts. It is absolutely crazy. So and all the guys are good. I can't believe Lime Rock, how well everybody managed, because the track is so short and these cars are so fast. But we had some Club TR guys bumping into it, and they were everybody was doing a great job of staying out of everybody's way. But you can see in some of the video how fast you would go around them. It's crazy. You'd come up over the jump in the back, and you would see 3 cars on that little mini straight. And like, thankfully everybody was in their mirrors properly. They'd be on a cool down lap, and you'd tear around them, and it worked.
That is the challenge of like trying to put together that one lap with a bunch of other cars on the track that might not be doing the same thing at the same time that you are.
Plus Lime Rock,
not easy.
You got to get your tires up to temp, and it's a pain. Like it's less than a minute around that track. It's not long, and there's really nowhere to really get your tires up to temp. There's not any insane braking zones or anything like that you can really get the tires to temp. It's a huge issue for me because my first lap was completely trashed there every time I went. It was always my second or third I'd have to get it done in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so you've kind of got a plan, it sounds like, for what needs to happen with the car to try and compete for that first place. Do you see, is there a ceiling that you think like you're going to do maybe 2 or 3 other things, And is that all that there is, or is there no such thing as a
everybody.
limit to what you can
This
do?
is one of the reasons I like Street Modified, is because we're playing in a sandbox, okay? And depending on what class you're in, the sandbox just gets smaller. And I don't believe that it's less and less time attack. I just believe it's less and less of a sandbox to play in. That's where I got into a really nasty argument last week about, them trying to say Sunday Cup wasn't time attack. Aggravates me to no end. No, their sandbox is just super tiny. So I don't believe we have filled out the Street Mod sandbox yet. And we every time we think we have, something insane happens. A DCT ends up in an S2000, or I still have the ability to put a dog box in my car, and I haven't, which is something that is probably coming in the future. And through that, with a dog box and switching over to drive-by-wire throttle, there is some tuning strategies that could basically give me clutchless up and downshifting, which there's going to be time there, especially since it'll open up my left foot to do all the braking. I'm going to be able to change attitude mid corner. I could do some drag the brake situation, really get the car to rotate in ways that I never can now. Some really cool stuff can happen on that front. There's a lot that can happen in aero. Right when we think we can't do any more with aero, somebody figures out something new. You know what I mean? And the limiting factor we thought was going to be the tires, and then you have companies like Falcon and Yokohama, where 200 treadwear no longer means 200 treadwear. They just lie harder. Right. In Falcon's case, 255 is not 255. Let's just be real. That should be a set measurement. It is not.
Right. Well, so talk about Street Mod versus the more unlimited classes. And when you're talking about Sandbox, you're talking about the rule set.
Yes.
So unlimited is unlimited.
Unlimited is pretty much unlimited. You got to start with a VIN car. Right. You have, but you're allowed to run whatever tire you want, basically whatever aero you want, and you can chop a good amount of the car up and get away with it before they kick you into super unlimited or whatever. You can really eat that thing alive.
But what you're saying
all
is
over the place.
But you like having a rule set that is not so open-ended, that has a little bit more of a structure to it, and then trying to work within the structure of the rule set.
Because it forces you to become inventive in the way that you're going to make your speed. And to a certain degree, Street Modified, no matter what, we have a McLaren 720S in the class now. To a certain degree, cubic dollars is going to win. End discussion. But Street Modified, forces that McLaren 720S to have to run a 285 tire. Okay. There's only so fast you can go on a 285 tire, or in my situation, a 255, which I believe now with the current trend in tires, they need to get rid of that disparity between all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive. And I'm working towards that. We'll see if they listen to me or not, but I think I've proven it.
And this is a 200 treadwear.
200.
Yeah. Which is, and
if it says 200 treadwear, it's 200 treadwear is kind of, and it needs to be able to be purchased out in the open market. So you can't have, get in with some weird Chinese company who just makes some Hoosiers and
crazy
slaps
one-offs or something.
Yeah.
Well, it gives you enough of a framework where, to think that a Subaru would be competitive with a McLaren. Yep. Okay, well then that rule set is definitely kind of
functioning,
packing the people together a bit.
It is definitely functioning, and you look at. I think Jackie has all time attack is figuring out the best mousetrap, and one of the things that, I don't know, it makes time attack a little different is most people build a car they start their build based off of passion, not out of logic. Okay,
sure. Me
being one of them. Let's be real. A 90s shitbox with 4 McPherson struts all the way around is not the right answer when a C5 vet exists. Realistically, a C5 vet is the perfect chassis for this.
Right.
Or a Lotus Elise. There's a ton of other options that makes sense. That I bet you if I were to have put the same amount of effort into, I would be going a bit faster. We all kind of laughed at Jackie when he first got that Supra, which is funny because, man, he has proven us all completely wrong.
Yeah.
Completely
Well,
wrong.
he did have a struggle with it at the beginning. Like, it was not an
100%
easy
he did.
path.
And when he's also put himself on the bleeding edge of development on that, and now he is the super guy. I got to be real. Toyota owes Jackie some money.
Sure. Thanks for tuning in. To hear the whole conversation, click below for the full episode of this podcast, or tune in every week on iTunes or Spotify. If you like these episodes, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, because your support is what makes all of this possible. As always, this show is brought to you by Flatirons Tuning, your premier source for any Subaru OEM or aftermarket parts. Check out our website at flatironstuning.com, and as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.